Hello everyone, in this class we'll learn about chemical regulation of respiration. The chemical mechanism of regulation of respiration is operated through the chemoreceptors. These receptors are stimulated by any change in the concentration of oxygen, carbon dioxide, H plus ions and other drugs, chemicals and hormones. Chemoreceptors are of two types, central chemoreceptors and peripheral chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors are situated in the ventral part of the medulla. They are distinct and separate from pontomedullary respiratory centers. Stimulus is increase in partial pressure of carbon dioxide. The mechanism of stimulation of these chemoreceptors. Carbon dioxide from the arterial blood crosses blood-brain barrier and enters the CSF and brain interstitial fluid. Carbon dioxide crosses the cell membrane, combine with water to form bicarbonate and splits into H plus ion and carbonic acid uh, in presence of carbonic anhydrase. And it is this H plus ion which stimulates the respiration. Once stimulated, they send impulses to pontomedullary respiratory center and influence rate and rhythm of respiration. Peripheral chemoreceptors. They are carotid body and aortic body. There are two carotid bodies, one on either side of the midline near bifurcation of common carotid artery. These contain chemoreceptors which are sensors of arterial oxygen tension, carbon dioxide tension and blood pH. Usually two or more aortic bodies are present near the arch of aorta. From carotid body, impulses are transmitted via herring nerve and from aortic body through the vagus, that is respectively ninth and 10th nerve. Each carotid and aortic body contains island of two types of cells, that is type 1 and type 2 cells. Type 1 cells are also called as glomus cells. These islands are surrounded by fenestrated sinusoidal capillaries. They are closely associated with cup-like endings of afferent nerve, that is glossopharyngeal. These cells have dense core granules. Granules contain catecholamine, which is a dopamine. Neurotransmitter is released at the junction of the afferent nerve and the receptor cell is dopamine. Glomus cells are stimulated mainly by the hypoxia. These cells have oxygen-sensitive potassium channels whose conductance is decreased proportionate to the degree of hypoxia. This reduces the potassium efflux and depolarizes the cell that leads to calcium influx and the fusion of released calcium with neurotransmitter in the receptor membrane occurs. This releases the neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft so that hormone will be neurotransmitter is dopamine bind with dopamine receptor on the postsynaptic membrane and action potential occurs in the afferent nerve, that is through the glossopharyngeal and the vagus, and impulse is transmitted to the respiratory center. Type 2 cells are also called as glial or supporting cells. This is the mechanism by which the chemoreceptors are stimulated. There is a decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen, which is going to stimulate the peripheral chemoreceptors and increase in the production of carbon dioxide, which increases the arterial H plus ion, will also stimulate the peripheral chemoreceptors, whereas increased arterial PO2 increases the ECF PCO2 and it leads to conversion of PCO2 into H plus ions there, which is going to stimulate the central chemoreceptors, and both help in the firing of medullary inspiratory neurons that increases the firing of the neurons of diaphragm and intercostal muscles that increases the contraction. There will be increase in the ventilation and that causes return of alveolar and arterial PCO2 towards the normal. So that means it balances the H plus ions and it is going to wash out the carbon dioxide and brings back the H plus ions back to the normal. Chemoreceptor reflex, here the afferent nerve is glossopharyngeal nerve, and the receptors are carotid and aortic body. The center is the respirator center, and difference are the nerves supplying the muscles of respiration, diaphragm and intercostals, whereas effectors are the respiratory muscles causing increase in their activity by contracting the muscles. Note that anemic hypoxia will not stimulate chemoreceptors. The blood flow in each carotid body is around 2000 ml per 100 gram of tissue per minute. That is the highest in brain. That is the highest, and in brain only 54 ml per 100 gram per minute uh, is the blood flow, and in kidney it is around 420 ml. As the blood flow per unit area is enormous, the oxygen needs can be met by dissolved oxygen alone. In anemia and carbon monoxide poisoning, dissolved oxygen is normal, and O2 concentration, O2 in combination with hemoglobin varies. Increasing the H plus ion concentration in the blood cannot activate central chemoreceptors because H plus ions, they cannot cross blood-brain barrier. That is in brief about the chemoreceptor mechanism of respiratory regulation. Thank you.